in my
Yes, no, Vanessa appeared only at the end, Alicia.
Yeah.
no, I know. Yes.
Well, so wait.
This is chapter 2?
This is well,
No,
no,
the
this
same. Oh, yes, chapter 2. Yes,
chapter 2, yes.
2.
Yes.
Okay.
Now Gabriela is here and probably Teresa will
Yes.
be here soon. Okay. So he is tired of the questions, and so he tells him, if you want to know, ask me, yes? You don't have to guess. Now, don't get sore. I wasn't getting nosy. I'll tell you anything. I ain't hiding nothing. Now, don't get sore. I just like to notice things. Makes the time pass. I'll tell you anything. Name's Jode, Tom Jode. Old man is old Tom Jode. His eyes rested broodingly on the driver. Don't get sore. I didn't mean nothing. I don't mean nothing neither, said Jode. I'm just trying to get along with shoving nobody around. So he gives his name. They go on driving. And the man, the driver, says, a guy that never been a track skinner don't know nothing what it's like. Owners don't want us to pick up nobody. So we got to sit here and just skin her along less we want to take a chance of getting fired like I just done with you. Appreciate it. Yes. So the driver explains, yes, that he shouldn't take hikers.
Hi, Vani.
Hi, Gabby.
I've knew guys that done screwy things while they are driving trucks. I remember a guy used to make up poetry. And this part is funny because he explains that another driver thinks of poetry while he's driving. Yes, because they get tired. They are alone on the road. When he, at the end of that paragraph, yes, when he explains about this driver who takes a dictionary with him and creates poetry while he drives, he asks, ever know a guy that said big words like that? Preacher, said Joe. So the preacher was the one who used big words. Well, it makes you mad to hear a guy use big words. Course, with a preacher, it's all right because nobody would fool around with a preacher anyway. But this guy was funny. You didn't give a damn when he said a big word because he just done it for ducks. So again, this idea, no, that how they enjoy their time.
Sorry, Maria Teresa said I'm having problems with my cell phone.
Oh my God, what a pity. Well,
sorry.
Thank you, Alicia, because I didn't read it. Okay. So then it is interesting because they are talking about this difficult life of a driver. And he says, yeah, a guy got to get ahead. Why? I'm thinking of taking one of them correspondence school courses. Mechanical engineering. It's easy. Just study a few easy lessons at home. I'm thinking of it. Then I won't drive no truck. So this was the time when these correspondence courses started appearing. No? So you could study by, you could take lessons on the post. Yes. So he wants to study mechanical engineering, which is funny, no? And then he would stop driving a truck. Then I'll tell other guys to drive trucks. Joe took a pint of whiskey from his side coat pocket. Sure you won't have a snort? No, by God, I won't touch it. A guy can't drink liquor all the time and study like I'm going to. Well, so Joe uncorked the bottle, took two quick swallows, recorked it, and put it back in his pocket. So they talk about women. Yes, what's the matter? Got a girl? Well, sure, but I want to get ahead anyway. I've been training my mind for a hell of a long time. I don't need no shot. I train my mind all the time. I took a course in that 2 years ago, another correspondence course. Suppose I pass a guy on the road. I look at him, and after I'm past, I try to remember everything about him, kind of clothes and shoes and hat, and how he walked, and maybe how tall and what weight and any scars. I do it pretty good. I can just make a whole picture in my head. Sometimes I think I ought to take a course to be a fingerprint expert. You'd be surprised how much a guy can remember. So you see, the driver is it is interesting, no, how he trained himself, no, in memory, and the things you can study. You can study to be a fingerprint expert by correspondence course. Well, you sure? Then Joe asks him, "You sure took a hell of a long time to get to it, buddy? Get to what? How do you mean? You know what I mean. You give me a going over when I first got in. I seen you." The driver looked straight ahead, gripped the wheel so tightly that the pads of his palms bulged and the back of his hands paled. Joe continued, "You know where I come from." The driver was silent. "Don't you?" Joe insisted. "Well, sure, that is, maybe. But it ain't none of my business. I mind my own yard. It ain't nothing to me." So you see, the driver starts to get a bit afraid. Yes, no, I didn't want to. I don't stick my nose in nobody's business. And suddenly he was silent and waiting. And his hands were still white on the wheel. "What happened? You got me wrong, mister," he said. "I ain't keeping quiet about it. Sure, I've been in McAllister, been there for years." So finally, Tom tells him that he has been in prison. I sent you the information about this prison, McAllister.
That's the reason, because he has new clothes.
That's right, exactly. And the driver knew it, because the driver looked at him. He had new clothes. He didn't know anything about the tractors that were tractoring people out. He hadn't got news from his father, so he made up all the pictures. So the driver knew, yes. And now Tom confirms his views. "Sure, I've been in McAllister, been there 4 years. Sure, this is the clothes they give me when I come out. I don't give a damn who knows it, and I'm going to my old man's place so I don't have to lie to get a job." The driver said, "Well, that ain't none of my business. I ain't a nosy guy." "The hell you ain't." Claro, because he has been watching Tom all the time. So you are nosy, ¿no? Nosy, así como metido.
Curioso.
He was like Sherlock, you know,
Claro.
he noticed all the details and he came to a conclusion and he was
That's
right.
right. And he said so because he said that he had taken a course, no, to
Yes.
look at somebody and make the picture. So the big old nose of yours been sticking out 8 miles ahead of your face. You had that big nose going over me like a sheep in a vegetable patch. The driver's face tightened. "You got me all wrong," he began weakly. Joe laughed at him. "You been a good guy. You give me a lift. Well, hell, I done time. So what? You want to know what I done time for, don't you? That ain't none of my affair." The driver doesn't want to know. "Nothing ain't none of your affair except skinning this here bull bitch along. And that's the least thing you work at. Now look, see that road up ahead? Yes. Well, I get off there. Sure. I know you are wetting your pants to know what I done."
Oh.
"I ain't a guy to let you down." So the driver stops because this is the place where Tom is going to get off. Joe leaned toward the driver. Homicide, he said quickly. That's a big word. Means I killed a guy. 7 years. I'm sprung in 4 for keeping my nose clean. So he has killed somebody, and that's why he has been sentenced to 7 years. But as he behaved well, he was out in 4. The driver's eyes slipped over Joe's face to memorize it. I never asked you nothing about it, he said. I mind my own yard. You can tell about it in every joint from here to Texola. So long, fellow, you've been a good guy. But look, when you've been in stir a little while, you can smell a question coming from hell to breakfast. You telegraphed yours the first time you opened your trap. Thanks for the lift. So long. He turned away and walked into the dirt road. For a moment, the driver stared after him, and then he called, Luck. Joe waved his hand without looking around. Then the motor roared up and the gears clicked and the great red truck rolled heavily away. So we have the presentation of our main character, Tom Joad, who had killed somebody. We don't know the circumstances, but we know that he had killed somebody. And we start chapter 3. Here we get, you remember I told you that there was a chapter about the characters and a chapter about their general situation, no? This is the one about the context. The concrete highway was edged with a mat of tangled, broken, dry grass, and the grass heads were heavy with oat beards to catch on a dog's coat and foxtails to tangle in a horse's fetlocks and clover burrs to fasten in sheep's wool. Sleeping life waiting to be spread and dispersed. Every seed armed with an appliance of dispersal, twisting darts and parachutes for the wind, little spears and balls of tiny thorns, and all waiting for animals and for the wind, for a man's trousers cuff or the hem of a woman's skirt, all passive but armed with appliances of activity still, but each possessed of the anlage of movement. So this paragraph, which is a beautifully written paragraph, shows how I sent you a picture of these oat beers, ¿no? Son como, no sé si vieron la foto, como arbustos que se quedan enganchados en la ropa de la gente. Cuando uno camina se le pegan a la ropa, ¿sí? Todo muy...
Abrojos.
Abrojos, ahí está, abrojos, todo muy seco, todo... yes, and that's why it says, armed with appliances of activity, still, ¿sí? Quietos, but each possessed of the anlage of movement. So they are there, ready to be caught by an animal's fur or a human's clothes, no? The sun lay on the grass and warmed it, and in the shade under the grass the insects moved. Ants and ant lions to set traps for them, grasshoppers to jump into the air and flick their yellow wings for a second, sawbucks like little armadillos, plodding restlessly on many tender feet. And over the grass at the roadside, a land turtle crawled. This turtle is important because it is a symbol. Turning aside for nothing, dragging his high domed shell over the grass. His hard legs and yellow-nailed feet threshed slowly through the grass, not really walking, but boosting and dragging his shell along. So you can see the turtle, no, moving with difficulty, but advancing little by little. The barley beer slid off his shell, and the clover burrs fell on him and rolled to the ground. His horny beak was partly open, and his fierce, humorous eyes, under brows like fingernails, stared straight ahead. He, the turtle, no, he came over the grass, leaving a beaten trail behind him, and the hill which was the highway embankment, reared up ahead of him. For a moment he stopped, his head held high. He blinked and looked up and down. At last, he started to climb the embankment. Front clawed feet reached forward but did not touch. The hind feet kicked his shell along, and it scraped on the grass and on the gravel. As the embankment grew steeper and steeper, the more frantic the more frantic were the efforts of the land turtle. The turtle is important because you see, I mean, this turtle has to use a lot of effort to move, because it is heavy because of the house that it has on its back, and the place is very dry, and the turtle is moving upwards, no? So everything is against the turtle, but all the same, the turtle goes on moving and moving and moving. So
Like people.
Sorry?
Like people.
Claro, like the people we are going to meet, because this turtle
Yes.
is carrying its house on him. The same like all these people who have to move, and they carry everything, all their possessions with him.
Yes.
No?
Inside them, and they continue.
And they
with all the
continue
difficulties.
with a great difficulty, yes? As the embankment grew steeper and steeper, the more frantic were the efforts of the land turtle. Pushing hind legs, strained and slipped, boosting the shell along, and the horny head protruded as far as the neck could stretch. Little by little, the shell slid up the embankment until at last a parapet cut straight across its line of march, the shoulder of the road, a concrete wall 4 inches high. As though they worked independently, the hind legs pushed the shell against the wall. The head upraised and peered over the wall to the broad, smooth plain of cement. Now the hands, braced on top of the wall, strained and lifted, and the shell came slowly up and rested its front end on the wall. For a moment, the turtle rested. A red ant ran into the shell, into the soft skin inside the shell, and suddenly head and legs snapped in, and the armored tail clamped in sideways. The red ant was crushed between body and legs, and one head of wild oats was clamped into the shell by a front leg. For a moment, the turtle lay still, and then the neck crept out, and the old humorous, frowning eyes looked out about, and the legs and tail came out. The back legs went to work, straining like elephant legs, and the shell tipped to an angle so that the front legs could not reach the level cement plane. But higher and higher the hind legs boosted it, until at last the center of balance was reached. The front tipped down, the front legs scratched at the pavement, and it was up. But the head of wild oats was held by its stem around the front legs. So the turtle managed to get there, managed to kill the ant that entered the shell, and managed to keep the oats, no? La ramita de cereal. So it was successful, no? But everything was very, 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 very difficult for the turtle. That's why we have all the chapter explaining how the turtle moves, yes? And the last sentence, because it is so well written, no?
Really, yes.
Wonderful.
You can see it. You can see it.
Yes, you can see the turtle. The old humorous eyes looked ahead, and the horny beak opened a little. His yellow toenails slipped a fraction in the dust. So this turtle is an icon in the novel, because it represents what the people will have to do or have been doing. Well, when we go to chapter 4, we get Jode again, Tom. When Jode heard the truck get underway, gear climbing up to gear and the ground throbbing under the rubber beating of the tires, he stopped and turned about and watched it until it disappeared. When it was out of sight, he still watched the distance and the blue air shimmer. Thoughtfully, he took the pint from his pocket and screwed the metal cap and sipped the whiskey delicately, running his tongue inside the bottleneck and then around his lips to gather in any flavor that might have escaped him. He said experimentally, "There we spied a nigger," and that was all he could remember. So that was a song that I sent you some information, I think, I don't remember. That was a song that he used to sing when he was a young kid. There we spied a nigger. At last he turned about. Well, why? Because this song reminded him of his childhood, and now he's entering the land of his childhood. At last he turned about and faced the dusty side road that cut off at right angles through the fields. The sun was hot and no wind stirred the sifted dust. The road was covered with furrows where dust had slid and settled back into the wheel tracks. Joe took a few steps and the flour-like dust spurted up in front of his new yellow shoes, and the yellowness was disappearing under gray dust. So you see, for a writer who writes so well, as we saw in the previous chapter, this is not a mistake. Yes, he uses the word dust a lot, many times, to show that everything was dust here. He leaned down and untied the laces, slipped off first one shoe and then the other, and he worked his damp feet comfortably in the hot, dry dust until little spurts of it came up between his toes, until the skin on his feet tightened with dryness. He took off his coat and wrapped his shoes in it and slipped the bundle under his arm. And at last he moved up the road, shooting the dust ahead of him, making a cloud that hung low to the ground behind him. So he is going to his house and he can see the fences, no? The fences that his family house had. The right of way was fenced, 2 strands of barbed wire on willow poles. And the fence is important, we'll see why later, no? Beyond the fence, the corn lay beaten down by wind and heat and draft, and the cups where leaf joint stalk were filled with dust. Jode plodded along, dragging his cloud of dust behind him. This is so overwhelming, no? Because this is the idea that the writer is trying to show us, that everything was dust. He moves and there is a dust, he leaves a trail of dust behind him. A little bit ahead, he saw the high domed shell of a land turtle. And now they are going to meet, he and the turtle, crawling slowly along through the dust, its legs working stiffly and jerkily. Joe stopped to watch it, and his shadow fell on the turtle. Instantly, head and legs were withdrawn, and the short, thick tail clamped sideways into the shell, because the turtle is protecting himself, no? Putting the legs inside. Joe picked it up and turned it over. The back was brown-gray, like the dust, but the underside of the shell was creamy yellow, clean and smooth. Joe shifted his bundle high under his arm and stroked the smooth undershell with his finger, and he pressed it. It was softer than the back. The hard old head came out and tried to look at the pressing finger, and the legs waved widely. The turtle wetted on Joe's hand and struggled uselessly in the air. Joe turned it back upright and rolled it up in his coat with his shoes. He could feel it pressing and struggling and fussing under his arm. He moved ahead more quickly now, dragging his heel a little in the fine dust. You see that he takes the the turtle, no? And he makes it in the bundle with his coat, no? So the turtle now is his prisoner. Ahead of him, beside the road, a scrawny, dusty willow tree cast a speckled shade. Jode could see it ahead of him, its poor branches curving over the way, its load of leaves tattered and scraggly as a molting chicken. You see, even the willow, this type of tree, which is always, you know, kind of falling, even the willow is tattered, ¿no? Está hecho jirones el árbol. Jode was sweating now. His blue shirt darkened down his back and under his arms. He pulled at the visor of his cap and creased it in the middle, breaking its cardboard lining so completely that it could never look new again. And his steps took on new speed and intent toward the shade of the distant willow, because it is very hot. So he needs a tree. Well, Teresa is here now, although I cannot see her, but I know I can see her name. At the willow, he knew there would be shade, at least one hard bar of absolute shade thrown by the trunk, since the sun had passed its zenith. There she is. Well, you are here, Teresa, now.
Yes. What, Elena, what page, Inés?
This is page 21.
Thank you.
There is, this is chapter 3 or chapter 4, now I don't remember.
Yes. It's chapter 3. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And a willow tree is no, chapter 4.
Chapter 4, yeah.
Sauce, sí, sauce.
Sauce.
Un sauce.
It is very good for the shadow.
Yes, but unfortunately the leaves are tattered. Sí,
Yes.
hasta las hojas están hechas jirones. So what he needs now is the trunk of the tree. The only thing that can give him some shade, no? So it is very hot, the sun is at the zenith, and so he needs some shade. He goes to the tree. And what does he find there? Remember, he's carrying the turtle under his arm. A man sat on the ground, leaning against the trunk of the tree. His legs were crossed and one bare foot extended nearly as high as his head. He did not hear Jode approaching, for he was whistling solemnly the tune of "Yes, Sir, That's My Baby." His extended foot swung slowly up and down in the tempo. It was not dance tempo. He stopped whistling and sang in an easy, thin tenor. "Yes, sir, that's my surfer. Jesus is my savior. Jesus is my savior now. On the level, sits not devil. Jesus is my savior now." So he's singing a church song. Jode had moved into the imperfect shade of the moldy leaves before the man heard him coming, stopped his song and turned his head. It was a long head, bony, tight of skin, and set on a neck as stringy and muscular as a celery stalk. His eyeballs were heavy and protruding. The lids stretched to cover them, and the lids were raw and red. His cheeks were brown and shiny and hairless, and his mouth full, humorous or sensual. The nose, beaked and hard, stretched the skin so tightly that the bridge showed white. There was no perspiration on the face, not even on the tall, pale forehead. It was an abnormally high forehead. So this man, who is also important in the story, yes, is there sitting under the shade of the tree. The man looked long at Jode. The light seemed to go far into his brown eyes, and it picked out little golden specks deep in the irises. The strained bundle of neck muscles stood out. Jode stood still in the speckled shade. He took off his cap and moved his white face with it and dropped it in his rolled coat on the ground. The man in the absolute shade uncrossed his legs and dug with his toes at the earth. Jode said, "Hi, It's hotter and held on the road. The seated man stared questioningly at him. Now, ain't you young Tom Joad, old Tom's boy? Yes, said Joe, all the way, going home now. You wouldn't remember me. So you see, the man recognized Tom. You wouldn't remember me. I guess, the man said. He smiled, and his full lips revealed great horse teeth. Oh, no, you wouldn't remember. You was always too busy pulling little girls' pigtails when I give you the Holy Spirit. You was all wrapped up in yanking that pigtail out by the roots. You maybe don't recollect, but I do. The two of you come to Jesus at once cause of that pigtail yanking. Baptized, both of you, in the irrigation ditch at once, fighting and yelling like a couple of cats. Joad looked at him with drooped eyes, and then he laughed. Why, you are the preacher, you are the preacher. I just passed a recollection about you to a guy not an hour ago. So the man is the preacher, yes, the one he found. I was a preacher, said the man seriously. Reverend Jim Casey was a burning busher. You understand a burning busher?
No.
Somebody who burns a bush, because you know the story in the Bible when
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Yes. Yes.
when the bush burns, yes, because God is there. And so the preachers who could make people, I don't know, get frantic about God, you know, the preachers, the Protestant preachers who went from town to town and they preached and people started shouting and speaking in languages, as they said, etc., were burning bushers, the ones who could make people see God. That was more or less the idea, no?
Yes.
I was a burning busher, used to howl out the name of Jesus to glory. I used to get an irrigation ditch to squirming full of repented sinners, half of them like to drown dead. But no more. Just Jim Casey now. Ain't got the call no more. Got a lot of sinful ideas, but they seem kindly sensible. So this is another funny character. You remember we said that there is a lot of humor in the novel too, because this man, yes, he used to be a reverend, he used to be a preacher, but he says that he hasn't got the call anymore, yes, la llamada. Why? Because he has a lot of sinful ideas.
Sinful ideas.
But the sinful
that seem sensible.
but they are sensible. The other day, I don't remember, it was Alicia who asked me, sensato, the word sensato, sensible. See, so his ideas
Sensible,
are
yes,
sinful.
sensible.
His ideas are sinful, but they are sensible. Joe said, you are bound to get ideas if you go thinking about stuff. Sure, I remember you. You used to give a good meeting. I recollect one time you give a whole sermon walking around on your hands, yelling your head off, because this is the way they preach, no? They shouted and they did, I mean, a lot of circus type of things. Sorry?
To call people's attention, right?
Ma favored you more than anybody, and Grandma says you were just lousy with the spirit. So have a little snort, because he offers the preacher some whiskey. Casey took the bottle and regarded it broodingly. I ain't preaching no more much. The spirit ain't in the people much no more. And worse than that, the spirit ain't in me no more.
And that's the worst, no?
Yes. Of course, now and again, the spirit gets moving and I rip out a meeting. Or when folks set out food, I give them a grace, but my heart ain't in it. I only do it because they expect it. Yes, so he blesses the people because people expected it, not because he had the spirit in him. You ain't too damn holy to take a drink, are you? Casey seemed to see the bottle for the first time. He tilted it and took 3 big swallows. Nice drinking liquor, he said. Ought to be. That's the factory liquor. Cost $1. Casey took another swallow before he passed the bottle back. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Joe took the bottle from him and in politeness did not wipe the neck with his sleeve before he drank. He squatted on his hands and set the bottle upright against his coat roll. His fingers found a twig with which to draw his thoughts on the ground. Imagine he can draw on the ground because the ground was so full of dust, no, that he can draw on the ground. He swept the leaves from a square and smoothed the dust. And he drew angles and made little circles. I ain't seen you in a long time, he said. Nobody's seen me. I went off alone and I sat and figured. Remember that figure is to think. The spirit's strong in me, only it ain't the same. I ain't so sure of a lot of things. So the man started thinking and now he's not sure. At the
He's
same time,
doubting now.
sorry, Teresa?
He's doubting.
That's right. At the same time, the turtle is there, no? The turtle dug at the road coat. Casey looked over at the staring garment. What you got there? A chicken? You smother it. Joe rolled the coat up more tightly. An old turtle, he said. Picked him up on the road, an old bulldozer. Thought I'd take him to my little brother. Kids like turtles. The preacher nodded his head slowly. Every kid got a turtle sometime or other. Nobody can't keep a turtle, though. They work at it, and at last one day they get out and away they go off somewheres. So you see the story of the turtle. The turtle, they caught turtles, but then finally one day the turtle escapes. It's like me. I wouldn't take the good old gospel that was just laying there to my hand. I got to be picking at it and working at it until I got it all torn down. Here I got the spirit sometimes and nothing to preach about. I got the call to lead people and no place to lead them. Look at this phrase, no? The preacher is a person who thinks a lot. And his conclusion is so interesting. I got the call to lead people and no place to lead them. So this is very deep, very profound. Lead them around and around, said Joe. Sling them in the irrigation ditch. Tell them they'll burn in hell if they don't think like you. What the hell you want to lead them someplace for? Just lead them. So the conversation is funny, but at the same time, it is very interesting, no? Going someplace, Joe explained a little tweaked. Going for home, maybe. The preacher could not be thrown from his subject. Going someplace, he repeated. That's right, he's going someplace. Me, I don't know where I'm going. Tell you what, I used to get the people jumping and talking in tongues and glory shouting till they just fell down and passed out. And some I'd baptize to bring them to. And then, you know what I do? I'd take one of the girls out in the grass and I'd lay with her. Done it every time. Then I'd feel bad and I'd pray and pray, but it didn't do no good. Come the next time, them, and me was full of the spirit. I'd do it again. I figured they're just